If you could tell me a bit about your childhood in Jamaica. Where were you born in Jamaica? What district?
Born in a place called Browns Hall. That's just outside Spanish Town, Old Harbour. And it's my childhood. Well, there are 11 of us in the family.
11 children?
Yes, 6 girls and 4 boys. I'm number 7. And, well, it was wonderful. I must say, childhood growing up is lovely. It's been wonderful. No problems apart from, well, it's a big family. And we were happy.
Yeah.
And yes.
What kind of things did you do with your brothers and sisters?
Play. Wonderful. Play together. Tell stories.
Tell stories?
Yes, I used to be a storyteller. I usually read a lot.
Yeah.
And every evening, without fail, I usually come home and all the family sit together and I read and read.
Yeah.
So I was called the storyteller of the house, which was very nice because I joined a library.
Yeah.
And I usually bring books home and we go day trips out and fetch the food in, you know, the usual things that children do in the homes.
Yeah.
Do your chores, like cooking, washing, ironing. I hated ironing. So, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So tell me about your parents. What were they like?
Lovely. Well, Mama, as usual, back home you never work. The women don't usually work. They rear children, shall I say. And Papa, he goes out and gets the food in, plant, and all those things. Yes, and well, they were lovely. They were nice. I love my mother and I love my father. They brought us up rather strictly, should I say.
In what ways?
Well, couldn't go out for late and couldn't go to places like partying. Never go to one.
Even when you were small children?
Oh no. Well, if what I mean by partying is like dances and stuff. You do meet rough people there sometimes and they're very wary. But like school outings and school fetes, yes, we do go to those. And of course we had to come in certain time. Can't sort of stay too late. And strict in the way that you got to behave, especially to adults. We don't answer back. You don't. It's very, very bad. You can't talk back to adults. And even when we go out on the street, if we do anything that's not quite right, and any adult sees us, but children all over, we do things, don't we? But if any adult see us and they're not happy with what we're doing or what we're saying, then, well, to be sure, my mother and father would hear about it and naturally will get a scold or a telling off or something like that. So we had to be on our best behavior most of the time. I would say of myself, I'm a thoroughbred as far as behavior is concerned. You just had to, and you grew up being that way. You had to behave. Naturally, there are times when you're behind your parents' back. I don't know which child doesn't do a little something that you shouldn't have done, but nothing outrageous because we know that they're going to hear. So that's it.
Was there any religion
Oh
in your
yes,
family?
oh yes. We do go to church.
What religion was that then?
It's Church of God of Prophecy.
Okay.
We used to go to church, and like at school I was a member of the Gildry Club, we call it 4-H Club, a Girls Gildry, or Girls Guide they call it here. And we go to church, we do performances for visiting people. And yes, so between the Church of God of Prophecy and the Presbyterian Church, yes, we do go.
But did you enjoy it, going to church?
Oh yes, I think I enjoy most things. It's as if it's a thing that happens. It's part and parcel of growing up. You go to church and it's just growing up, yeah? So you don't sort of say you don't enjoy it, and you do. It's lovely, it's just part of life. So you just get on with it. We don't do much rebellion. There's not a lot. So you just do. My father usually say, and which looking back at it, it wasn't a very nice thing, in that children should be seen and not heard, you know, because you don't ask too many questions and things. And looking back, I think, why do they say that? Because you don't want to know as much, yeah. So there you are.
So
But living in the house and garden. Talking about garden, we usually have our own little gardens, you know. Yes, yes, absolutely beautiful. Because you have this big yard, and you plant your own little flowers, and that's my little patch, and so it's beautiful. Everybody's got their little patch and making it nicer than each other, and it used to be lovely. Yes, I like home, and my father usually play with us sometimes. He'll come out, and there are times when we go singing, and we'll be in the yard singing, and night playing in the moonshine and things like that, different games. And whenever we sing, and if anything doesn't sound that right, he'll say, no, that's not quite right, start again, you know. But he takes part in whatever we're doing, which is nice. And my grandfather, wonderful, lovely old gentleman. He lives nearby us, so we usually go across and visit him, takes dinner for him, and he always leaves some dinner for us when he eats nice. And what we usually look forward to is my father, when he eats, he always, without fail, leaves some of his dinner for us. Always. Maybe it's one of the traditions of the elderly ones home. I don't know, but always. And no matter how small his dinner or how large, there's always something left for the children. So whenever we finish eating, we always go, and Papa usually share. Nice.
Sounds like a very nice man.
He was nice. He was very nice. Absolutely beautiful. And one thing I didn't like as a child, every Saturday, when my father brings in all the food from the, should I say, the farm, he always send myself and others, all the children, take something to that one, and I always say, there's nothing going to be left for us. It's amazing. And now I grow up and I think that was a nice thing to do, but he's always sending food, a coconut here, a banana there, or something like that. And I was going really grudgingly thinking, Papa isn't going to leave anything for us, but there's always something for us, yes. But he does that sort of religiously. So,
So you learn to appreciate the art of giving as you grow older.
Yes, you certainly do, because you sort of grow up with that situation. And like now, I would say to my children, my husband especially, whenever you're going to a certain place to visit anyone, always take something, always do. And to the boys, if you're going to visit anyone and there's a lady in the house, take some flowers. You always take some chocolates. But yes, that's very nice. So we usually tell them to do that sort of thing, because it's one of those things that's embedded in you. And once you've grown up with certain things, it's hard for you to break.
So, in your school time, when you were at school, what kind of things did you learn about England?
About England, what we did was we had not so much about the country, much more that we have books. We have history books, Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir William Pitt, and all those history. We learn the history books, and all the things that you've learned is things that you now hear. And yes, but as for the country, not in details. We hear mostly from people who've been, when I was younger, who've been and tell us about England, what it's like, and it used to be very nice, very posh and rich, that sort of thing they tell you. And I remember one lady coming home after visiting England and told us that everywhere was paved, not with gold naturally, but everywhere was paved. And to me, I was looking to think, oh, isn't there any earth or something like that? But it's different. And the houses were big and tell us quite a few things, which when I came, it's not as grand as they mention it to be. The houses were big, yes, but I thought the houses were factories. I think most people think the houses were factories, because when I came to the airport and coming along and I saw these houses, chimneys, and I thought they were factories, because back home the houses were not like that. There were houses, bungalow type houses. So when I saw these houses, I think everybody thought they were factories, because they're tall and they've got chimneys on top and smoke was coming through, you know, and yeah.
So was that a disappointment to you to find that out?
I expected the houses to be prettier, like ours. That's how we look at houses. Houses with plenty space, big garden, and they're not so crowded. You've got one house here and a big garden, you've got another house there, lots of space. Houses didn't link one to another. But here, when I came, they were just like houses one beside another, and you hardly see anything that's pretty, very nice. So I don't know whether I thought it was a disappointed. I don't know. I just came, and that's it. My mind was open. But that was my first impression, that the houses weren't very pretty.
So what year?
They still aren't. So,
what year did you actually come to England?
1958 in April.
You were how old then?
20.
20. What made you want to or decide to come to
Well,
England?
actually, I wanted to be a nurse, right? Always have. When I was young, I met this nurse who usually come to the district, and she usually wear a hat behind her head, you know. Somehow, I don't know whether that's what makes me feel good about it, but I just wanted to be a nurse, like this particular nurse, and it's never left me since. Naturally, my brother was here, a couple of brothers were here, and in Jamaica you have facilities to be nurses, but it's like there's more people than the availability of the places. And so naturally you couldn't, and again there are times when who you know, then you get through much quicker. Not necessarily what you know, is who you know. Because when I came away, I had my third year Jamaica examination under my belt, which was good, and even then I still couldn't get through. I had interview, but I didn't get through to be a nurse, but I was determined to. And so I came, and that's it. I managed to apply to one of the hospitals, and of course they said I didn't pass the test, which I knew was, to me, no. I knew I passed it, yeah? You know when you pass a thing. Oh yes, in Wolverhampton. They thought I didn't get as good a mark as they expected me to get, but I thought, well, I knew that I would have passed it, because what test I was taking home, this was just a brush off, nothing. Anyway, I realized afterwards that that particular hospital did not take many black people, few, but she did offer me, nonetheless, that I could be an SEN. I should train to be an SEN, state enrolled nurse. I didn't know the difference, but my brother did, and he said no. He wanted me to be SRN, state registered nurse, and he said if you do SEN, what will happen is that you've got to do sort of 3 years, and then eventually you've got to, if you want to be an SRN, you've got to take another 3 years, which means 6 or 5 years to do the one thing. So many of our girls got trapped doing this SEN training, and eventually have to do another 2-3 years to qualify as a state registered nurse. But it so happened that my brother knew the difference, so he said, no, you're not going to do that. Hence, I didn't take up the offer. Applied to another place, and I think it was 3 letters I had to write before I was accepted. But I kept writing and writing, simply because I want to. And when I went to this, what we call labor exchange, where whenever you come, people come up from foreign parts, they give you a little bit of money to tide you over until you get a job. And she was saying to me, why not go to the factory? And I says, no, I don't want to go to a factory. I want to go to be a nurse. Eventually, the matron called me. And when she did, I was sort of taken aback during the interview. She simply rang the nursing tutor and says, can you come and meet this girl and show her around the classroom and blah blah, because she says she's written to me 3 times. And I thought, all my letters, you got them and you didn't answer. So it seemed to me, she says, as if she's keen to be a nurse. So I thought, So that was a Wednesday. The Friday, she says I should come in and start. So that's wonderful. So the Friday I came in, went out, buy my block stockings and all those little things that you told me to buy. And the Friday I came in with my little suitcase, and the home sister met me. Come in, nurse, she says. And I thought, oh, she calls me a nurse already. Wonderful. So that was it. Hang on, something is here. Sorry. So that was it. So I started my training, and 3 years, and yeah.
So how did you find working with English people?
Oh, no problem. Sorry, no problem. Because I didn't take any notice of whites or blacks. No problem. I just want to be a nurse, and I was a nurse, and that was nice. So I came in, and all I wanted to do was to just do whatever I'm doing well. Naturally, some experiences that you have probably weren't very pleasant, but I didn't put it down to being black or white. I just put it down to being people not very pleasant. Yeah, sometimes. But apart from that,
Can you tell us about one incident that you remember at all?
Oh, well, what I hated was people kept saying to me, will you do that, and will you? I hated that. You know, because I don't talk to people like that. I wasn't taught to talk, will you do this, will you do that? Would you like to? That sort of thing. And that I hated very much. It's as if you're being pushed about, and I hate being pushed about. I'll go willingly and do whatever, but the mannerism needs to be different. And a couple of episodes that I had, which was a little bit shocking, I think, when we went to being here for 3 months at the PTS, we call it, which is pre-training school. Went for 3 months, and then during that 3 months we were supposed to go on the ward. You're allocated a ward for every Monday. So the first Monday I went on to this particular ward, we were told that we should not lay out a dead person. We should, as a junior nurse, we shouldn't have to lay out a dead person. So this one day, the first Monday I went on, this nurse says to me, can you come with me? And she's got this trolley, which I thought was a bath trolley. It was laid up as a bath trolley. So we went into this ward, and she says to me, can you take off this gentleman's clothes? Yeah. So naturally, I thought he was going to have a bath. So I went in, and I started taking off his clothes, and he wasn't helping me. And I thought, it's funny, I was getting off his pajamas, and I was doing it, and this gentleman wasn't helping. So I said to her, can't he help himself? And she looked at me like that. And then she called me outside, and she says, he's dead. And I thought, oh, I couldn't believe it. I just stood there, bolt upright, and I couldn't speak, I couldn't do anything. I've never seen a dead man before, because in Jamaica you do not handle dead people. There's special people who do that, and you don't go looking at them. And here am I, taking off his pajamas, not knowing he was dead. I thought he was... Anyway, and I just stood there, says, I just couldn't speak. Anyway, she didn't get me back into the room. She just got me to do something else. And I thought I didn't know. So that was a shock, because that's something I didn't expect. And one other episode with this same thing was later on, when I was roundabout doing, in my first year still, on the same ward, I had a gentleman who died. And then, by then I knew he had died. But usually, you have two people laying out a dead person. And because I'd done that before. But this particular day, the sister, who was not very pleasant, at least not to me, and she says to me in so many words, who do you want to do it? Do you want me to go and do it? She says, get on with it. All by myself, and this man was very big. So I went and I laid out that man, and I've never hugged a dead person, but I had to hug him, because what you're doing is rolling a sheet so that he can roll, to put a sheet under him to wrap him in. So I had to hug him so he doesn't drop off the bed while I push the sheet across, and then I go back and I hug him again to pull, and I was there all by myself, and I had to do the whole thing and do it properly. And it's like you're remembering the whole thing. And then when the gentleman from the morgue came to put him on the trolley, I was the only one there helping him to put this gentleman on the trolley. And what happened was, I was very small. I'm not as I am now. I was very, very thin, very small. And then I lift this man, the one side, and he was pulling, and my arm locked because it was too heavy. I couldn't raise my arm, so my arm was locked, and he literally had to drag this gentleman off my hand and put him on this trolley. And those two episodes, I don't think I'll ever forget, especially this one that I had to dress myself. It was absolutely terrible. Anyway, that was it. It happened, and I survived.
Some of the things you have to deal with.
And that particular ward, it's as if I was stuck on there. I stayed on that ward for 6 months. 6 months on that particular ward. Usually, we stayed on each ward for 6 weeks. But this particular ward, I stayed there for that long. And each time we have a change list. There's always a crowd of nurses around the change list to see where are we going next time. And my name has never been on there, and I usually cry. I just stand before that change list and cry because I just want to move. And everybody else is getting experiences someplace else, and I was just on that ward.
Why do you feel you weren't put on the list to move around?
Well, I didn't know why. I mean, those days you don't question, you just do. It's like, and I wasn't brought up to question. That's another thing. You just do things and do the best you can. Anyway, eventually I realized, or I understood from the senior nurse on that particular ward, that the sister asked for me each time because I was a good worker. So she asked, could I stay on the ward? And so eventually I came off because I was long enough on there. And then the ward that I liked very much, they kept me on there for 2 weeks. And I thought, wow, But nonetheless, that was it.
So did you find it easy to progress in your career as a nurse? Did you find it easy to progress?
Well, nothing is easy, not really. You study hard, and we studied hard. We have to, because we needed to make the grade. And it's like there was about 3-4 of us in the same group, and we studied together. We knew that because we were from a different country, we need to do our best so that we can get good grades. Otherwise, what's the point of not doing it properly? So we usually find we had sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we did work hard.
Yeah.
So we came on top. We get first, second, third, that sort of thing. Wonderful. And one other thing that struck me was every year we had someone who gets a gold medal. The year when all the black nurses came on top, there was no gold medal. And I understood that the matron said that there were no suitable candidates for a gold medal this year.
How did that make you feel?
Terrible, naturally. Then I felt bad because one of us should have had a gold medal, but we didn't. There were no suitable candidates, and all the black girls were on top. Absolutely wonderful. We were pleased with ourselves, and we were proud that we were, because we worked for it and we had to. But no, yet the following year, gold medal starts again. So that particular year there was no gold medal, and yes, I felt bad. I think all of us did. But I suppose that was then you realize, there is a difference here, because all the time we kept working and doing whatever we had to do, rough or soft, yes, but we didn't put anything to say, is it because I'm black? Is it because, even now, I still don't think because I'm black for anything. I just work, and if it does happen, I just brush it under the carpet, because that sort of stigma I don't take around with me. I can't be bothered with that. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a person in my own rights, and I'm as good as any other person, and I do my best. And when I've done my best, nobody else can do better. That's my best. So
what about, did you have any problems in finding accommodation, housing?
then, I think when we started, I lived in the nursing home. We had to live in the nursing home until we finished our training. Absolutely beautiful. We couldn't do otherwise. We couldn't live out. And even when we become third-year nurses and you were able to live out, we had to apply to the matron to live out. And then she doesn't always grant the application. If she thinks she doesn't want you to live out, then you don't. So you had to live in to the nursing home. They looked after you. It was good. Apart from the food was awful. It was terrible. Can you imagine coming from Jamaica with all that wonderful, nice food, and you come here and you have tapioca for afters, and gooseberry as well, and haddock, and the haddock wasn't even cooked like we would cook it now. No spice, no nothing. Plain haddock. Occasionally you'll get a boiled egg, but most of the mornings you go on duty, you get toast and tea. And the food was very nice. So we usually cook ourselves. It's amazing. We go out and we buy meat and we have our little pot and we cook. And and when we go home, those who live out and have relatives, then we bring dinner in for the others. But apart from that, it was okay. We enjoyed it, and you know why? There was quite a group of us, and we could have a laugh, and we could, yes, visit each other's relatives' home, and it was good in that we didn't have to sit and sulk if things weren't nice on the ward. We come home, well, for me, sometimes I cry when I get home, because this particular ward I was on, the sister wasn't very pleasant. And simple, I think, because I couldn't answer back. The girls who could answer her back, they got away with it, but she sort of lived on me. It's like I knew exactly what she's going to say when I get on the ward in the morning, and I'd prepare myself exactly what I'm going to say to her. But when I got there, I can't say it. And so, hence, I come home and I cry. I used to cry a lot. It's amazing. Cry and cry. And I usually say to myself, if only I was an Irish girl, I would take an overnight boat and go home. Because I'd been to Ireland and I knew how near it was.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I would have gone home. Simply because sometimes I wasn't happy. And I didn't particularly like to cry. Again, when I get letters from home, and if any of my brothers or sisters were ill, I cry, you know. And I did miss them. So, but you grow up, and Jamaica was too far to go home. So you just got to get on with it. Yes, the best you can. And I had no intention of failing. I had no intention of copping out. So you had to keep going. So,
So what are some of the changes in your life? Do you feel that you've changed a lot?
Yes, I've grown up, surely. Well, after doing my general training, I went away and did my midwifery. Came back to the same hospital and did my midwifery. Then was in 2 parts. I came back and did my second part midwifery, which I enjoyed very much. I enjoy midwifery, absolutely beautiful. By then you grew up a little, yeah? The crying stops because you become hardened. Oh yes. And you're now a trained person. You're not a trainee anymore. You're a trained person, so you know exactly what you're doing, and if you're asking for advice, then you know what you're asking for. It's different. And I become a little bit more mature, and you could handle yourself. Yeah? And I often says to me, some of the times when I was in my training, and the way some of the senior nurses treat you, I usually say, when I become a senior nurse, I usually say that, I'll do so and so. But you never can, because it's not in you to do it. So I couldn't. But yes, I enjoyed my midwifery very much. Parts I did in the hospital, and I ended up being a community midwife.
So what year was that about?
And the year 1963, I finished my midwifery, and I got married then, which was nice. And I continued. And then, of course, you have children, 4 of them, and working in the meantime. You know? I mean, those days you had to work to bring up your children, and you want better for your children than you have for yourself. And if you don't work, I mean, how are you going to school them? So yes, work in between. So I have the children, and I have maternity leave, back to work, and that's how the circle went. And eventually, yes, I grew them up, and beautiful. And then I retired sort of 3 years ago. Yes, I retired 3 years ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed actually my work, and the little experiences that I have, which was not very pleasant, then I don't bring them around with me. You don't forget them, but I don't sort of look at them and think that's a hindrance, because it's not been. At the time, maybe it slowed you down a little, or you worry about it at the time, but then you grow out of that, yes?
Did you feel that when you were fully trained and qualified, did you feel that you actually had respect from the other nurses?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, certainly did. I didn't have, because, put it this way, if you behave to people like you would like them to behave to you, then you have no problem. But if you go around pushing people around, then you have retaliation. But I didn't have any problem at all. And my work colleagues were lovely. It's like you work as a team most of the time. You work as a team, and if you work together, then it's pleasant. When you have rough times, anxious times, and you get over it, then you can laugh afterwards. We have some anxious times, but because you're like a team, then you help each other. I find in midwifery you don't work on your own. There are times when naturally it's your job to do certain things, but there are others who help you along. For instance, if you're delivering a person, then you're delivering, somebody help you to do the washing, they help you to take her to the ward and ward her and things like that, and wonderful. So the work becomes easier and more pleasant.
So what did you enjoy best about midwifery?
Delivering babies.
Like that.
Wonderful, yes. Delivering babies. And you? Bathing babies. I love bathing babies. And see the joy in the parents' face, and it's amazing when you deliver a lady, everything went well, and the husband is laughing and you're laughing and the baby's crying. It's absolutely beautiful just to see that. And in the early days, you never usually have husbands in with the mothers, but in the latter end, you do have them in, seeing and encouraging them, and naturally some of them can be a hindrance. Oh yeah, sometimes you wish some of them wouldn't be there, but then you have others who are very helpful, very encouraging to the wives, and helpful to yourself. There are times when things happen so fast, you've got to say to the husband, get me that, pass me that, wonderful, yeah? And it used to be wonderful in the homes, because when we were in the training in the earlier days, we have home deliveries, quite a lot of home deliveries, and the husbands were wonderful, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, absolute.
Okay, so you said you got married in 1963.
Yeah.
So tell me more about your husband, how you met him.
He's a nice fellow. We met at church actually.
Yeah.
And well, yes. Actually, when we met, I usually was working, yeah? And we don't get many days off. And when we do get a day off on a Sunday to come to church, that's nice. And I think he met me once, and then he hadn't. We didn't. He just sees me, yeah? And then he didn't see me for something like 3-4 weeks. And I remember him saying he told me that he said to his uncle, I saw this girl, so-and-so, isn't she a Christian? Because I haven't seen her again. So then the uncle explained that I'm a nurse and we don't always get Sundays off. So yes, we met, and it was something that, because you're in the church, you don't go courting like people do now. Oh, those days you don't. Oh no.
What happened then?
Oh, well, you don't, because you're supposed to be, the young ladies are supposed to be chaste, yes? Mm-hmm. So you have to behave yourself. You don't go out having dinners together, and like some of the young ones probably do that now, but then you have the pastor of the church, who sort of is like an in-between, and you talk. Probably you might write a letter or something like that, and in between, but you don't go outright courting and going places and things together. No, you had to be chaperoned, shall I say. You do. And say, for instance, eventually when I did say yes to him, then when I visit his uncle's house, I mean, they had to be there, you don't sort of go by yourself and things. So there's always an adult somewhere around. But it's like, it's amazing. When we go to choose the ring, we were together. It was just, and I was dead scared. You wouldn't believe it. It was so. That's how we grew up, and that's how it was. And because you were in the church, you had to abide by the church rule. You don't go seeing each other as such. But it was nice, and yeah, and I would do it again the same way. And then we grew up and together, being married, we grew up together, and then we didn't court for long, 3 months, and you were married. Because I don't leave you hanging around for years and things like that, yeah. And we were married. It was quite nice. And then naturally we have children, and yeah, we're still in the church, and he's still wonderful, and he tells me so too. Yes, we're good friends. Yeah. We're good friends, and we do things together, and the children think we're crazy sometimes. It's a crazy household we have. Well, we play about, yeah, quite a lot, and we chase each other around the house, and it's nice. Oh yeah, as old as I am, you wouldn't believe it. And yeah, and when the children come home, well, now that they've grown up and all of them are away, but when we come home, the house is just as mad. Everybody's running around and hugging and yelling, and oh, yes, it's good.
So this is what it was like when they were young as well?
Oh yes, when they were younger, it was good. We sang together, we play, the children play, some of them, and we had a piano and we play together and everything. Yes, it's a happy household, if I may say so. Yes, and all the children are in the church, and I've now got a granddaughter, 2 years old yesterday.
2 years old?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
well
she's
done.
wonderful.
Are all your children in England?
Yes, yes. The youngest is in Stockport, not Stockport, Newport. That's Wales. The one is in Basingstoke, and the one is in Stockport. It's a girl, and the one is in Wolverhampton. The oldest is in Wolverhampton. He comes every day, every Sunday for dinner.
Every Sunday.
Oh, he's lovely. Yes, yes. They're all okay so far, and I thank God that they have behaved until now. Yes, we touch wood and thank God we haven't had any problem with any of them, and I don't expect to have any, because yeah. So
Do you feel that the way that you brought up your children was similar to your own upbringing?
yes, but I do give them a bit of leeway. They grow up differently in that, apart from they know, because they know that we don't go partying, we don't go certain places. There's certain things we don't do, full stop. So they don't ask us to. I remember my young son, my older son, when he was at school, and you know they have what they call discos and barn party, whatever they call it.
Barn dances.
Yeah, barn dances, yeah. And I remember he wanted to go to the one, but he didn't ask because he knew that sort of thing we don't, yeah. So what he did was he brought the letter home, the invite, and he put it in a place where we could see it. And I thought, so we both looked at it and we laughed together, and we thought, he wants to go, but he doesn't want to ask because he knew that probably we won't let him go. So it was this person's birthday, and then they had a barn dance afterwards. So we said, okay, by then he could drive, and so we said, all right, shall we let him go? But he should come back certain time, not for the dance, go to the party and get back certain time. And so we decided we would. So we called him and we said, yes, you can go, but come back by certain time and you can borrow the car. And he was absolutely pleased. He did, and he came back exactly the time when we asked him to come back. So he didn't stay for the dance, he stayed for the party, and he came back. And so that's the sort of thing they do. But yes, they grew up the way I believe that we grew up back home. And naturally I didn't put too much of a strictness. I give them a bit of leeway now and again, which is nice. And I don't hang on to them and say, you can't. When they approach, they know what they can approach us for. And within reason, yes, we allow them to. And even when they go away, like especially the big one, he's going climbing, rock climbing, or not real rock climbing, you know, walking, but they're going some hill or wherever. And he would ring, when he was at university, he would ring home and says, Mom and Dad, some of my friends are going certain places and I'm going with them. You know, he didn't say, can I go? He said, I'm going with them and this is what's happening. And if they are doubtful about anything, then they ring and said, certain thing is happening and this is the contents of what's happening. What do you think? And if it's something that we think is not going to be very good for them, then we said, well, we describe, although he's described the contents to us, we describe it again, and this is what it sounds like, this is what it sounds like. So this is what we're saying to you, it's your choice. Do you want to go? When we have pulled it apart, and they will say, well, no, we think not, or yes, we think, and then we let them choose whichever. There are certain times I believe my son, the young one, went out and they invite him to a certain place. It's something to do with religion. And this thing sounds rather culty to us because the contents that he described to us didn't sound rather nice, and he didn't think it was, and that's the reason why he rang and asked us. And we just told him no, because it didn't sound very palatable. So he didn't go. And eventually it was on the television what this group was doing to young people, young students, and he called my attention. He said, "Mom, that's the same person that invited me to a certain meeting." So you find that there are times when, yes, you have to guide them, and you have to, although they're old, they still come back and ask for certain guidance, which is nice.
Sounds like you've got good communication with
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, all the time, absolutely. And they ring, I think, every week, sometimes twice a week. Now my daughter, every day I ring. It's beautiful. And if I don't ring today, they ring, and yes. But yes, we keep in touch all the time. And usually when they come home, there's always what I call a doggy bag. I've got one doggy bag for that one for that one, yes? So, I mean, they're coming down. My one son yesterday rang to say they're taking us to a carvery tomorrow. So they're coming from Basingstoke to take us to a carvery. So we're going to a carvery tomorrow. But yes, they do come. So I went out to the shopping this morning to get my doggy bag ready. Oh Lord, it's terrible.
So what would you say was the most important thing in bringing up children? What's the most important ingredient?
Okay, bringing up children, I always say that they need to respect adults. Again, respect themselves. And if you want to earn respect, you've got to respect yourself. And you need to behave in the manner that people will accept you. And be careful of the group that they join, yeah? Because if they join certain groups, then you're just like them. So be careful of the sort of people you mix with, certain groups, and learn how to differentiate good from bad, which they've been taught, and then pick their choice. And knowing that we are here, and if they don't, if they're not going to be behaving themselves, they don't want to disgrace themselves, neither the parents, neither the church, and those things, yeah? So if they do, then they can't go wrong, yeah? And seek help when they need it. And because there are times when you have children needing help and they don't go to the parents, they go to the wrong people to ask for advice. And who to tell what advice they'll get. So we make sure that they're not afraid of us to come to us to ask whatever it is. It's amazing. Like my daughter, the things that daughters tell fathers, sometimes they don't tell mothers, do they? It's amazing. Sometimes my husband will come and says, well, so-and-so says, so-and-so. I thought, what? Why didn't you tell me? But that's relationship, yeah? Which is nice. And I suppose the boys will come to me with certain things that they don't tell the father. But eventually, we both know, because we meet.
So would you say that there was much difference between how black parents bring up their children and white parents bring up their children?
Well, not being a white parent myself, it's very hard to say. Apart from behaviors that you can see on the street, I don't know, probably now in this country, I believe black parents are a little bit lax, and simply because of the government. Because certain things that you would do to your children or the way you would bring them up, put it this way, a slap now and again don't hurt a child. And I know that some children, no matter how young they are, they start reporting their parents because they give them a slap. And the government will tell you shouldn't slap your children. As far as I'm concerned, my children, they didn't get any slapping because they know exactly what I mean. I just look at them and they know you can't or you can, yeah? But you don't necessarily have to, depending on how you bring your children up. And if you bring them up with good values, then naturally they're going to be abiding by them. If you bring them up properly in the house, then they're not going to disgrace you when you go out street, are they? Because I see children kicking and knocking and bawling at the parents out street. That couldn't happen to me because they know how to behave at home and they behave simply the same way when they go outside. But I just wouldn't know how to say the white and the black, how they grow up their children. I wouldn't comment on that because I know how I bring up my children, and I can see how certain children behave outside, and probably it's just the way they bring them up.
Okay.
So
All right. So you've been in Wolverhampton since you came to England, is that right?
fortunately, yes, it's a good old place, you know.
Is it?
I like Wolverhampton.
Why?
Yeah, because I came here and I stayed here and I'm living here. If I'm in Wolverhampton, it's got to be nice.
Okay.
Simple. Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Like everywhere else, you have on the news certain times, this thing is happening here and this thing is happening there, but it sounds worst when you're away from the place, yeah, than when you're at the place. So yes, it's no worse than any place else. Everywhere have their downfalls and their uprising, yeah, and everywhere have the little slums and the good parts. Just the same.
So in what ways has Wolverhampton changed since you've been here?
Oh yes, the streets are different to start with. Oh boy, the buildings are better.
Yeah.
When I came here, say like in town, you know the streets, and they're small streets, cobblestones and stuff like that, and the buildings weren't as posh. Yes, it's nicer. You have big roads, ring roads, you get lost sometimes now. And people who have left Wolverhampton in the early years, when they come back, they can't find it. The Amanda Centre is improved, and there wasn't an Amanda Centre. It's wonderful. It's better now. Yeah, more upmarket, should I say? It's lovely. I think I still got pictures of old Wolverhampton. My husband have some place, what it used to be like, and the streets. Some of the streets, I forget what they're called now because they have disappeared. Yeah, into buildings and such the likes. But yeah, Wolverhampton is much better than it was to look at. Should I say no? The market is nicer too.
Yeah.
Everything.
Is it bigger?
The market? Oh yes. When I came to Wolverhampton, we had a market. Do you know where the town hall is? There was a market right in that little area. That's where the market was. Not so far back. But yeah, it was old and not so nice. But then it was market, that's what it was. Yeah. It could be better as it is now. I'm not very impressed with the market now, the outside market. Inside is okay. Outside could be better than it is. They have improved it, but really, it could have been better.
Okay, so looking back on your time in Wolverhampton, what things would you say that you've achieved while you've been here?
What I've achieved?
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. I came to Wolverhampton, I was a non-nurse. I became a nurse, midwife, mother to children, wife to a husband. Now that's wonderful. And since I came here also, became a Christian, and yes, and I've now retired, and I'm enjoying my retirement. I've started a day centre since I retired, and I've done lots of little things, and I'm keeping alive and healthy as much as I can, and doing for others as much as I can, and I'm enjoying my retirement. I think I'm working harder than when I was working, but I have to keep going because otherwise you'll seize up, huh? And when you've lived a busy life, it's hard to just sit and do nothing. So although I've retired, in the sense of the word, I'm not. And I love life, and thank God I'm alive, and I'm just doing the best I can with it. Yeah.
So what are your plans and your hopes for the future now?
Isn't that wonderful to keep on living and serving God? And one wonderful thing has happened is that I've lived to see my children grow up and can manage for themselves. Yes, there was a time when I was ill, and I was wondering am I going to live to see them grow up? Now I have, and I thank God for that. They can manage on their own. They have got a career, all of them, and God's helped me to help them, or help us to help them. And they have now reached a place where they can manage on their own, and they can look back and say, thanks, Mom and Dad. Yes, and I'm proud of them. And yes, I'm just happy to be alive. Yes, it's wonderful.
And you'd like to stay in Wolverhampton?
Well, I'm in Wolverhampton. I'm staying in Wolverhampton. Yes. Oh yes. I'm not intending moving to any place else. So, at least not right now. I'm not thinking about that.
Okay.
So I've settled in Wolverhampton for the time being.